Discovery of never-before-seen photographs has led to a new theory about the sinking of the Titanic.
A treasure trove of photographs, gathering dust in an attic for more than 100 years, finally made public.
This is the Titanic equivalent of King Tutankhamun's tomb.
There's two of them that show marks on the ship's exterior that look like it's somehow affected by something going inside the wall.
A photograph taken more than 110 years ago has resurfaced from the Titanic's final days. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Smiling passengers, deck chairs neatly arranged, lifeboats hanging high above the rail. But when experts zoomed in, they turned pale when they realized something shocking. Subtle details began to stand out.
By studying these tiny creatures, the microbiologists can now confidently lay down a time frame for the Titanic's final destruction.
From a distant iceberg believed to have sealed their fate to the mere 20 lifeboats aboard, one image contains a detail historians still can't fully explain.
The Titanic disaster is propagated, and some are just half-truths. And this is certainly true when it comes to the number of lifeboats that the Titanic carried.
More than a century after the RMS Titanic vanished beneath the icy waters of the North Atlantic,
the Titanic has been hidden in darkness at the bottom of the Atlantic.
Scientists and historians have revealed an extraordinary new way of seeing the famous shipwreck with unprecedented clarity. In a landmark achievement for marine archaeology, deep-sea researchers have now used advanced underwater imaging and AI-assisted reconstruction techniques to restore detailed photographs, one of which was used to build a highly accurate 3D digital model of the Titanic wreck site, resting about 3,800 meters below the ocean's surface. Over the course of a major mapping expedition, robotic submersibles equipped with sonar, laser scanning, and high-resolution cameras made hundreds of thousands of individual image captures of the wreck and surrounding debris field. These more than 700,000 deep-sea images were combined using sophisticated photogrammetric processing to create what experts describe as the most comprehensive and detailed digital representation of the Titanic ever produced. The resulting 3D model replicates the ship down to the level of individual rivets and structural details, allowing researchers to explore the wreck as if in person without disturbing its fragile remains. The digital reconstruction left experts pale as it delivered new scientific insights into the ship's final hours. By examining the digital twin, historians have been able to identify features such as the position of boiler room components, the state of steam valves, and other machinery, all offering fresh evidence about how the Titanic sank. For instance, an open steam valve discovered in the stern section of the wreck corresponds with survivor accounts that engineers remained at their posts, keeping generators and lighting running as long as possible to aid evacuation efforts. In fact, the Titanic photo found revealed that they kept the lights on till the end. The enhanced imagery and model have also revealed details consistent with eyewitness descriptions of the collision, like the structural deformations and punctures in the hull that line up with reported damage from the iceberg impact. This has supported some long-held theories about how the ship's hull failed and how water flooded its compartments. But this isn't the only 110-year-old Titanic photo ever found. And when the photo about the Titanic iceberg was restored by AI, experts instantly turned pale. On April 12, 1912, just 2 days before the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg and sank, Captain W.F. Wood of the British passenger steamer SS Etonian snapped a rare photograph of a massive iceberg while crossing the North Atlantic. What makes this more than just an early 20th century seascape is that Captain Wood carefully recorded the geographic coordinates that closely match the location where the Titanic would later collide with an iceberg on the night of April 14th and ultimately sink, claiming the lives of more than 1,500 people. Wood was an avid amateur photographer, and he took the image on his ship. After his voyage ended in New York, he developed the photo and mailed a print of the photograph to his grandfather with a handwritten letter identifying it as the iceberg that sank the Titanic. He revealed that the Etonian had crossed the ice tracks 40 hours before her and in daylight. Historians and auctioneers have revealed that there weren't actually any photos taken from the Titanic itself of the iceberg it struck, so Wood's photo is unique and important. There were other iceberg photos from the area taken days before and after the disaster, but Wood's photo is the strongest candidate for showing the very iceberg that doomed the ship. This was mostly because its location and profile closely aligned with the crew sketches from survivors such as Joseph Scarrett and Frederick Fleet, who had described the strange shape of the testimony and drawings. But there's some debate about the iceberg that sank the Titanic. Icebergs usually rotate and break apart, and other nearby bergs photographed after the sinking also resemble survivor descriptions. Still, this image stands out because of its timing, recorded coordinates, and the context provided by Wood himself, making this one of the most haunting images from the Titanic disaster to remain today. Another shocking image has emerged from the Titanic, this time showing both life-saving equipment and also a part of the tragedy. In the more than a century since the Titanic sank on April 15, 1912, its life-saving equipment has become some of the most poignant physical evidence of the tragedy, especially the original cork and canvas life jackets carried aboard the ship. At the time of the disaster, the line was equipped with around 3,500 of these bulky life jackets.
The life jackets that the Titanic had, they had roughly 3,500 life jackets on board, specifically the ones that were on the Titanic.
Enough in theory for every passenger and crew member aboard. Although there were few lifeboats to take advantage of that buoyancy, unlike the modern inflatable personal flotation devices, Titanic's life jackets were made from linen or canvas outer shells stuffed with cork. This was a material chosen then for its buoyancy, although it was later revealed to be unwieldy and even unsafe in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Some survivor accounts revealed that the cork life jackets could cause injury when worn in a fall into the sea, or could fail to keep a struggling person afloat for long in near-freezing temperatures, where hypothermia could set in rapidly. Today, only a tiny fraction of those original life jackets have survived. Museums and private collections around the world hold about 6 to a dozen authentic Titanic life jackets recovered from the debris field after the sinking, especially by vessels such as the cable ship Mackay Bennett during the grim body recovery operations that followed. One of these, made by Fosbury and Company Limited.
In Titanic's case, the life jackets posed a distinct problem. They were manufactured by a London company called Fosbury's,
a manufacturer of maritime safety gear in the early 20th century, was displayed publicly at Titanic Belfast in 2022 to mark the centenary of the disaster. These surviving artifacts remain in fragile, century-old condition, and in some cases, the original ribbon ties and cork padding are still intact. For historians and experts, these strange photos from the Titanic have revealed the objects which were meant to save lives, but were limited by design and environments. But the Titanic photos have also revealed some shocking truths about the lifeboats on the ship. Photos have revealed that the RMS Titanic carried just 20 lifeboats on its modern voyage, and this number has become one of the most enduring and tragic symbols of the disaster. While Titanic was one of the largest and most luxurious ships of its time, the lifeboat arrangements were undermined compared to the luxury features. Designed to carry well over 3,000 passengers and crew, Titanic's lifeboats could actually accommodate only about 1,178 people, roughly half of those on board and only around a third of its total potential complement. This gap wasn't exactly because there was no space on the vessel, only that the ship was built with davits capable of supporting up to 48 lifeboats, and early designs even contemplated as many as 64 boats. The decision to limit the number to 20 was because of complacency, aesthetics, and compliance with regulations that didn't keep up with the passenger ship size.
So Titanic only had enough lifeboat spaces for about half of those on board.
At the time, the British Board of Trade's rules required vessels over 10,000 tons to carry a minimum of only 16 lifeboats, and this was a standard established long before ships reached Titanic's 46,000-ton scale.
But also the fate of the Titanic that's still on the bottom of the ocean.
Titanic's 20 boats actually exceeded what was legally required, yet those rules were tragically inadequate given the number of souls aboard. On the night of April 14th to 15th, 1912, when Titanic struck an iceberg and began sinking,
well, it is a tragedy that continues to fascinate. After more than a century, the Titanic hitting an iceberg and sinking in April 1912.
These 20 lifeboats would prove woefully insufficient. Many of the boats were launched partially empty amid confusion and a lack of crew training, wasting a lot of space. Eventually, only about 700 people were rescued in the lifeboats by the responding ship Carpathia, even if there were many seats available. The lifeboat shortage reflected technical shortfalls and misjudgment of sea safety. Many designers and operators placed a lot of faith in Titanic's watertight compartments and bulkhead systems.
The largest underwater scanning project in history. It's incredible to see it like this.
And they even thought the ship was unsinkable, instead of preparing for the worst-case scenario. Now, when experts look at the photos of the neatly lined boats on the Titanic, which have been restored by AI, it conceals a cruel reality that many could not escape. After the disaster, there was a major overhaul in maritime safety law. In 1914, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was established, stating that ships should carry enough lifeboats for all passengers and crew. But when experts looked at the 110-year-old photo of those who boarded the Titanic, they were filled with the dread that it was their last goodbye. On April 10th, 1912, the RMS Titanic slipped away from the White Star Line docks in Southampton, England, and it started what would be its first and only voyage. It was a journey that ended in tragedy just 5 days later. Contemporary photographs of the liner's departure capture a scene of optimism. The crowds gathered along the quayside, and you can see dignitaries and families waving to loved ones aboard. The massive hull of the largest ship was seen moving steadily out into the Solent and beyond. These images are now preserved as part of the historical record and freeze in time, a moment that would soon be laden with sorrow for thousands of people around the world. Taken just hours after the noon departure, these black and white photographs show Titanic in all her grandeur. The boat towered over the tugboats that guided her out of Southampton Harbour, with the funnels billowing smoke as she began her transatlantic crossing. For those watching, it was a proud display of maritime engineering and human ambition, one that promised safe passage to New York City and the opportunities of the New World. But beneath the celebration were countless personal farewells that carry a haunting poignancy. Passengers, some who reunited with family and others bound for new lives, stood on deck, smiling for postcards and candid shots, while their relatives on land waved anxiously from the decks. No one in those crowds could have known that within days, the proud ship would collide with an iceberg.
The remarkable new images of the Titanic, as you've never seen it before.
In the frigid North Atlantic, sealing the fate of more than 1,500 people. Historians have said that these departure photos serve as powerful visual bookends to the Titanic's story. There were images of hopeful beginnings, contrasting sharply with later scenes of chaos, loss, and grief in New York and Southampton after news of the disaster reached home shores. In the days following the sinking, crowds packed outside White Star Line offices and railway stations, seeking word of survivors and news of their loved ones. But many of these historic photographs from 110 years ago also reveal some survivor stories, giving insights into what truly happened on the ship. In the vast and heartbreaking history of the RMS Titanic disaster, few human stories resonate as poignantly as that of Robert Douglas Spedden, whose life is now captured in a photograph recently emerged and restored by AI. The 6-year-old boy had a brief life and was linked with the world's most infamous shipwreck. Born on November 19, 1905, in New York City, Douglas was the only child of wealthy American parents, Frederick Oakley Spedden and Margaretta Corning Spedden, and was traveling with them and their attendants aboard Titanic in April 1912 as the family returned home from a European holiday. A rare and iconic photograph taken aboard the liner showing young Douglas in a sailor suit playing with a spinning top on the promenade deck captures a moment of carefree innocence just days before the catastrophe. The image, snapped by Irish Jesuit priest and photographer Father Francis Brown, became one of the most enduring visual reminders of everyday life on the Titanic before the ship struck the iceberg.
In April of 1912, the Titanic sank in the Atlantic Ocean, killing 1,500 people.
When Titanic collided with an iceberg late on April 14, 1912, Douglas was asleep in his first-class cabin. Amid the unfolding chaos, his nanny, Elizabeth Burns, whom he affectionately called Muddy Boons, woke him and tried to calm him down by saying that they were going on a trip to see the stars. The Spedden family, along with their nurse and a maid, made their way to the starboard boat deck and boarded Lifeboat number 3, ultimately surviving the night's terror. Douglas actually slept through much of the evacuation and into the early morning hours, waking up on the lifeboat to find icebergs around them. Afterwards, Douglas's mother turned their extraordinary experience into a unique memento for her son. In 1913, she wrote and illustrated Polar, the Titanic Bear, a children's tale narrated through the eyes of Douglas's beloved teddy bear, chronicling their voyage, the sinking, and their rescue by the RMS Carpathia. The manuscript, privately kept for decades, was rediscovered and published in the 1990s, bringing the family's personal story to wider audiences. Tragically, survival of the Titanic was not the end of Douglas's story. On August 8, 1915, just 3 years after the disaster and at only 9 years old, Robert Douglas Spedden was struck by an automobile near his family's summer home in Maine and died from his injuries. It was one of the earliest recorded child automobile fatalities of the era. Aside from people, some of the photos that came out of the Titanic decades later revealed just how luxurious the ship was, and those spaces turned to graves. The RMS Titanic was seen as the pinnacle of early 20th century luxury travel. It was a floating hotel that sought to blur the line between ocean liner and elite resort. Its first-class public rooms and leisure facilities were designed to rival the grandest hotel and private clubs of the day, offering amenities that few could have imagined in ocean travel at that time. Yet, after the ship's tragic collision with an iceberg on the night of April 14, 1912, these spaces, photographed in lavish detail before the sinking, came to symbolize not comfort, but profound loss and helplessness. On board, photos have revealed that first-class passengers enjoyed a dining saloon capable of seating more than 500 guests, decorating in Jacobean style with oak furnishings and ornate detailing meant to evoke the great houses of England. The intention was clear, as they focused on making guests feel as if they were in a grand estate and not aboard a ship crossing the Atlantic. Nearby, another photo reveals a smoking room, which awaited those seeking relaxation after dinner, complete with mahogany walls, inlaid mother-of-pearl, and views over the promenade deck. Beyond social lounges, Titanic offered state-of-the-art recreational facilities rarely seen at sea.
I wanted to meet with the families of Titanic victims and survivors, to hear their story and learn how they felt about how I depicted their ancestors.
A gymnasium equipped with rowing machines, mechanical horses, and electric camels provided exercise for first-class travelers, while a heated saltwater swimming pool promised an oasis of relaxation amid the Atlantic. There were also Turkish baths, complete with steam rooms and marble-lined repose areas, which extended this sense of indulgence, allowing passengers to unwind as though in a premier spa. A modest barbershop served grooming needs, with swivel chairs and marble countertops for the highest level of comfort. The opulence of these interiors was captured in photographs and memories from Titanic's brief voyage. But in the hours after the hull was pierced by ice, these same rooms became silent witnesses to disaster, their elegance drowned under freezing seawater as the ship foundered. What was meant to be an environment of leisure and refinement instead became coffins of wealth and privilege, underscoring the stark reality that opulence offered no protection against catastrophe. While some photos have revealed the previous luxury of the Titanic, others have showcased the dedication of the crew members on the ship. In the harrowing hours after the RMS Titanic collided with an iceberg late on April 14, 1912, crew members across the doomed liner displayed extraordinary dedication to duty, usually with the expense of their own lives. Deep below deck, the engine room crew worked tirelessly to keep the massive steam engines and electrical generators running. According to photos later revealed and survivor testimony, the engineers remained at their posts in boiler and engine rooms, operating pumps and machinery to slow flooding and keep distress systems active, even as conditions grew increasingly perilous. These men knew the dangers that they faced. None of the engineers or electricians survived, and many are believed to have perished in the bowels of the ship as it foundered. At the heart of Titanic's radio communications, wireless operators Jack Phillips and his junior colleague Harold Bride played an important role. As the liner sank, Phillips continued to transmit distress calls, including the internationally recognized CQD and later SOS messages, in hopes of summoning aid from distant vessels. Despite the ship's electrical systems failing and water getting into the Marconi room, he sent urgent Morse code alerts until power loss made it impossible to make transmission. Bride eventually survived after being washed from the ship, but Phillips didn't. Above deck, the ship's band, led by Wallace Harley, provided a stark and poignant contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. As lifeboats were lowered and passengers struggled for safety, Hartley and his fellow musicians continued to play, reportedly performing hymns such as Nearer, My God, to Thee, in a calm effort to soothe fear and panic. None of the band survived, but their actions have since been celebrated as among the most selfless and noble moments in maritime history. Some photos have revealed the work of engineers, wireless operators, and musicians, while others have exposed the flaws in construction of the Titanic.
Titanic has their own story of seeing it for the first time, and probably the most frequently asked question to me.
The decades since the RMS Titanic was discovered on the Atlantic seabed, photos and scientific analysis of the wreckage has suggested that weaknesses in the ship's construction might have contributed to how rapidly it sank after colliding with an iceberg.
Titanic clearly would have passed on its way to the big monster iceberg.
Researchers from the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology realized that about 3 million wrought Ryan rivets used to hold the hull plates together contained unusually high levels of slag, which is a byproduct of iron smelting. This made them more brittle than they should have been, especially in the frigid North Atlantic waters, where iron is prone to losing ductility and becoming susceptible to fracture under stress. Metallurgist Timothy Folk's examinations of rivet samples recovered from the wreck revealed slag concentrations several times higher than modern standards, suggesting that when the Titanic struck the iceberg on the night of April 14, 1912, the force of the collision caused many rivet heads to break or pop free of their holes. This in turn may have allowed hull plates to separate along their seams, enabling seawater to flood the ship more quickly than if the rivets had held. Images and sonar mappings of the wreck support this theory, showing narrow tears and popped rivets along seams rather than the large gash once imagined in early accounts. Some researchers have also explored whether pre-existing conditions, like coal bunker fires reported before departure, might have slightly weakened nearby hull structures. Many photos didn't only reveal the construction flaws, but also the warnings in place. In the lead-up to the Titanic's sinking on April 14, 1912, a series of photos and testimonial records show that multiple safety systems and warnings were in place. Throughout the afternoon and evening, the liner's wireless room received a lot of iceberg warnings from nearby ships, including reports of heavy pack ice and drifting bergs. But these messages were not always relayed immediately or clearly to Captain Edward Smith and the bridge officers. Many of these warnings were handled as routine radio traffic or prioritized below passenger messages, meaning that critical hazard information was delayed or lost in the shuffle. On deck as night fell, the Titanic's lookouts
It told me how to find the Titanic. When the Thresher and the Scorpion imploded, all these pieces.
Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee were stationed in the crow's nest without binoculars, a situation resulting from an earlier miscommunication over equipment. They remained alert despite the calm, dark conditions that made ice difficult to spot. Shortly before 11:40 p.m., Fleet detected a looming object directly ahead, struck the lookout bell 3 times, and immediately phoned the bridge with the warning, "Iceberg, right ahead." Bridge officers acknowledged the message and issued orders to maneuver. But by the time evasive action was underway, the ship was too close to the obstacle to avoid collision. There was also a lack of emergency preparedness. A scheduled lifeboat drill earlier that day had been cancelled, and the crew had not carried out comprehensive evacuation practices. This left many crew members and passengers uncertain about procedures during the crisis. 110 years ago, the Titanic crashed, and now photos are revealing the truth behind what happened on the massive ship. What do you think is the most shocking photo? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.